Excellent. All righty. So here we are. Welcome. It is so good to see you. It's been fun to chat with you while we've been getting set up. And we are going to launch into what I call the first lesson, Introduction to Iridology. This is actually some of the exact content that I share, that I teach in the course. So here we go. By way of introduction, my name is Judith Cobb. I am a master herbalist, natural nutrition clinical practitioner, certified iridologist, and a certified comprehensive iridology instructor, certified through IPA. I have been in the holistic healing business industry for 4 decades, over 4 decades now. And I got into this business because actually I got interested in holistic healing because as a young adult, I was in my early 20s, I had some health issues and the medical doctors couldn't seem to put their fingers on it. They could not tell me what was causing the problem. They couldn't tell me what was not causing the problem. And right about then, I met a man who knew something, and he was just a few years older than me. He was a young man. He knew some things about natural health. His mom was hot and heavy into this. And he started teaching me what he knew as we spent more and more and more time together. And that eventually led to a marriage proposal. And yes, we have been married. We will be celebrating our 41 years anniversary this summer. So, and we now kind of laugh at the fact that he knew so much more than I did when we met. And now I know so much more than he knows because, of course, this wasn't his path. In the years that I've been a holistic health practitioner, I've authored several books, and they were self-published and self-distributed, which is the really hard way to do it, I think, but that's how I did it because I knew no other way. Pregnancy Naturally was one of them, the Herbal Birth Kit Handbook, Healthy Kids Naturally, The Essential Guide to Nature Sunshine Products, Biokinesiology and Color Therapy Levels 1 and 2, and the most recent textbook is Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology Textbook, which is the textbook that we use in the actual course. I've also created and taught many courses over those years. Herbology Level 1 was my original course that I designed 35 years ago. It was 20 hours of herbal training for in-home use. So we taught how to use commercially available herbal products. And my students loved that course so much, they begged for a second one. So we added on a level 2, which was 16 hours of advanced herbal training for in-home use, taught those courses for many years. Went on from there and developed Biokinesiology and Color Therapy Level 1 and Level 2. For several years, I was a certified prenatal educator with the ICEA. So I created and taught prenatal classes. I also, most recently, within the past decade or so, have created the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System course, which is an IPA-approved iridology course that covers what IPA describes as Level 1 and Level 2 iridology. So stay with me to the end of our time together, and we will talk a little bit about the workshop, the course that is coming up. I am also a proud member of the Canadian Association of Holistic Nutrition Professionals and a proud member of the Canadian Association of Natural Nutrition Practitioners, and also a proud member of the Alberta Herbalists Association. I've studied nutrition, several different schools. I've studied iridology under 8 different instructors, 3 different styles. I've had many different herbal instructors as well. All right, so now that you know about me, and some of you have been kind enough to introduce yourselves, and if you haven't done that already, I would love it if you would drop it in the comments if you're with me on Facebook or on Instagram. If you are with me live on the webinar, I would love it if you would just let me know where you're from and a little bit about your background so that I can make this presentation, this little class we're doing today, fit what you need it to fit. Elmak, great to see you. Pranay, great to see you. Pakruthi, great to see you. And I hope I'm saying all these names right, but I would love to know who you are, where you're from, and what your background is. Alrighty, so we want to answer 5 questions today as we talk about iridology. The first one is, what is iridology? We need to know a little bit about where it came from. We need to know why it works. We need to know what it can teach us, and we need to know how it should be used. Now, if you have any other questions you would like to have answered today, please shoot them to me in the comments or the chat box. And if I can possibly work them into into today's presentation, I will. So as we get ready to go into these questions, it really helps me to know a bit about your background. Are you a holistic nutrition practitioner? Are you an aromatherapist? Do you have iridology background already? Are you a homeopath? Are you a herbalist? Because I can tweak this presentation on the fly to make it be what you need it to be. Hello, Rise with Jackie. Good to see you. Thanks for being there. Let's first start with talking about what is iridology. Iridology is, on the most simple basic level, the study of the iris of the eye, and that, of course, is the colored part of the eye itself. And for those of you who might be new to this, the correct pronunciation is iridology, not iridology. Okay, iridology might be studying these things on the side of our head. Iridology is studying the iris of the eye. Constitutional iridology, which is where we are focusing today, recognizes that certain iris traits always suggest a short list of specific health predispositions. Not health guarantees, not health diagnoses, but health predispositions. Kimberly, you're a nutritionist. Welcome. So glad you're with us on Facebook. What we also know is that when we are looking at an iris, we are looking at information that takes us back up to 4 generations, right? So it's what has this person received from their parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, and potentially even great-great-grandparents. We are not going to change things we see in the eye by doing cleanses, by fasting, or by taking special supplements. Why would I say that? Because what we see in the iris is genetic. We don't change our genes by taking a vitamin, right? We may be able to turn genetic expression on and off by changing our nutrition. And actually, we know we can do that, but it's not going to actually change the genes. And therefore, we're not going to change the iris structure. This is genetic. It provides us with a framework that helps us to understand our clients' physical health and emotional and personality tendencies as well. All right, and so we're looking at genetics. Mayra is with us. I hope I said that right. Myra from Mexico, living in Dallas. Yes, you've got a holistic office. You work with biomagnetism and was introduced to Reiki. Lovely, lovely. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for introducing yourself. Modern iridologists often also have a background in sclerology, which is the study of the white part of the eye. So where the iris itself is genetic, the sclera is dynamic. The sclera teaches us about what's happening in the body now. It's almost never going to give us a disease name or a diagnosis, but it will teach us where the hot spots are. When we combine what we see in the sclera for hot spots with what we see in the iris for inherent potentials, with the client's symptoms, we get a really deep understanding of what the roots of the problems are. And then based on what we understand now about the client and what our modalities are that we use, we can begin creating protocols. We can begin making suggestions to help this client work with that very foundational level of their health. Is this making sense? If this is making sense, give me a 1 in the comments. Hi, Detox, thanks for joining us. Give me a 1 in the comments if this is making sense so far. All right, so now we need to also understand, yes, Cindy and Duria, thank you for letting me know that this is making sense. So we want to know, how did iridology come to be? Because this wasn't just somebody's bizarre dream that made them think, ooh, we can use the eye like a crystal ball. Kimberly and Kinga, thank you for letting me know that this is making sense for you. Wonderful. Iridology is based on, in ancient cultures, we know that in Egypt, India, China, and Greece, iridology was used. They looked at the eyes, maybe not in the exact same way we do now, but they had the habit, they had the understanding to look at the eyes to gain insight into what was going on. We know, though, that science evolves. Now, this is really important because, we once thought the earth was flat. Well, I didn't. That predates me. I'm really not that old. The earth was flat is what was the belief was, but now we know differently, right? Science evolves. Science is the art of asking questions and investigating to find answers. Science is never an absolute truth, right? Science is the art of asking. And so because research has been ongoing, we know that some of what has been taught about iridology, some things that still are hanging on today, are not quite right. Let's look at a little bit of that history as we launch into, we're going to look at a lot of stuff today, and got another 30 minutes with you, hopefully. Ignaz von Petschle. Okay, how many of you have heard of Ignaz? If you've heard of Ignaz, just give me a yes in the comments box. Here's the story. Some of you have. Excellent, excellent. Here is the story. Ignaz was an 11-year-old boy. That we know. He was in Hungary. That we know. From there, the story gets a little bit murky. It goes that it was either an owl or a hawk, that he either caught, trapped, or found a bird that either was injured or got injured in the process of being caught or trapped. Okay, so there's so many variables here that we really don't know what they are. Joanne, thank you. I'm glad you've heard of Ignaz. Now, the story goes that as an 11-year-old boy, he was astute enough, and some 11-year-olds are, that he noticed a line that had formed, a black line that had formed in the owl's eye. And my question is, how did he get this owl to sit still enough to actually look at its eye from that close to be able to see it? At any rate, what we need to know from here, and the rest of the story is that as the bird healed, this line disappeared. Now, some of the challenges that exist with this story are this. The surface of an animal's eye, and especially a bird's eye, is very, very different from a human eye. And there is no way that this thing could happen in the surface of an owl eye without there being actual serious damage to the owl's eye. Because a bird's eye is very different from a human eye, we also know that this cannot happen in a human eye without there being serious damage to the surface of the eye. What is most important here, and before anyone thinks that I'm putting on a hate for Ignaz, I am not. I am not. Regardless of what the story really was, we love Ignaz because something in his bird experience tweaked his interest, and he started studying. As he got older, he became a medical doctor, and he started looking at human eyes, drawing out human eyes, writing out their case histories, and starting to correlate, well, this client complains of this, I see this in the eye, oh, I've got another client who's complaining of the same thing, oh, they've got something similar in their eye. And so he started doing the research, he started doing the science, and that is what is so exciting. Then we move on to Pastor Neil Liljeqvist in Stockholm, Sweden. He also, being a pastor, he had a lot of access to a lot of people, and he correctly made the correlation that people who have fiber structure like what we see in the eye on the left of your screen, where the fibers are fairly straight, fairly densely packed, are more resistant to disease and more resilient in the healing process than people who have a looser fiber structure, a more open weave, like the image on the right of the eye, on the right of your picture rather. However, one thing that he taught that we now know is not quite right is he taught that pigments like this were the result of toxic exposure. We now know that this is not accurate. We know that this is actually genetically set as well, even when these are not present at birth, but they become apparent later on, sometimes much later, sometimes at the age of 40 or 50 or 60. We know that this is all inherently predetermined. I compare this to the fact that my hair has not always had gray in it. As a matter of fact, when I was a little girl, my hair was platinum blonde. When I had my first baby, my hair turned dark blonde. And about 10 years ago, the gray started creeping in, right? That's all genetically predetermined, can be turned on or off to a certain extent, can be sped up or slowed down by things that I choose to do, because those things, again, turn on and off genes. That's exactly what these pigments are telling us, right? When they are not present at birth and they come up later, it's an indication that this person, again, has that genetic tendency. And when this pigment is present, it says that something is likely being turned on, and we want to watch for that. Then we have Pastor Emmanuel Falca. He also, all of these researchers diagrammed the iris. They each created maps. They were not talking to each other. They didn't have the internet. And interestingly, as we look back at the maps they created, they were all very, very similar, which boggles my mind. It absolutely boggles my mind that they could be doing this research independently and come up with the same information and be correlating this information by hand. My goodness, they didn't have computer programs to sift through this and find the correlations. So Emmanuel Falca mapped the iris. There's actually an institute in Germany called the Falca Institute that teaches iridology, which is very cool. Then we have Rudolf Schnabel. Rudolf Schnabel was also in Germany. This is so cool. All these researchers are in Central Europe, which is very, very cool. He also did research on pigment, on the color patches we see in the eye. He was one of the first people to use a microscope to examine the iris, to really look at that very fine detail. Of course, now we have technology that is readily available that makes it so easy for us to get really good, clear, blown up, enlarged images, right? And so here, again, we've got examples of some of the kinds of stuff that Rudolf Schnabel would have looked at. Rudolf and I agree on something. I would have loved to have met all of these men, but I love what Rudolf says. He said it was no easy task, and those who believe or would like to believe that handling iridoscopy, which is what they called iridology, can be learned within a few weeks or even a few days, are mistaken and do a disservice to a good cause. I totally agree with that. As a student of iridology for over 4 decades, I am continuing to learn. There's always new research. There's always more to learn. And so this is one of the reasons why I teach my course the way I do. We'll talk about that in a minute or two, actually in about 20 minutes. Joseph Ungerer, also from Germany. Ungerer studied with Schnabel. This is cool, right? He knew, however, that doesn't he look like a lovely man? I love his face. I love his smile. He just looks like he would be the most patient, kind, loving teacher on the face of the planet. He knew his students were reading books and accepting printed word about iridology before adequate research was completed. Even in my lifetime, I have seen iridology books that were published that were later proven to be inaccurate, right? And he was very concerned about this. So as he did research, he refused to publish his work until it had been analyzed and reviewed by his professional peers. He wanted his work to stand up to the test of time. I love that humility that says, I don't know everything. I want to know more. I'm doing the research. I want to make sure that what I'm teaching is correct. I love that. And that is something that I strive for. Joseph Dack, who we give a lot of credit to for modern constitutional iridology in North America. He was a dedicated iridology researcher, and he also pioneered iridology photography and he was an iridology instructor. We have Theodore Kriega, and he said he was a student of Unger, Deck, and Schnabel. He felt that iridology was one of the best assessment tools, but that it was not a standalone tool. And I love this because he felt that it should be combined with urine, hand analysis, finger analyses, tongue analysis, feces analyses, all those kinds of things. I like to combine iridology with lab tests. So I will often ask my clients to go to their medical doctors and get various lab tests done. I like to combine it with asking many, many, many questions in order to understand my client better. And as far as I understand things like skin and fingernails and other symptomatology, I like to incorporate all of that as well. He actually said, I hope that a later generation will succeed in establishing a single uniform system. In spite of zealous efforts, these so far have not succeeded. And that is one of our challenges. And you may have seen that. How many of you have been snooping around or researching on the internet? And what you find is that there's a lot of conflicting information. If you're finding there's conflicting information on YouTube and places like that, I want you to give me a 2 in the comments. Prane Rende is asking, when does the iridology class start? The actual course, Prane, will start in September. Stay with me to the end of our presentation today, and I'll give you a little more information about that. North America, we've got Bernard Jensen, who we absolutely adore. He kept iridology alive in North America when the Cold War was going on, when we were getting no more information out of Germany because that was taboo. He kept things going with what he had. And for that, we are so grateful. Gifted healer. He's another man. I never had the chance to meet him, but don't you just love his face? Doesn't he just look like a man you would want to hug the first time you met him just because he looks like he should be your grandpa? Yeah, absolutely. Then in the late 70s, early 80s, we have Harry Wolff and Bill Cardona. Now, Harry was an American-born German. He got his hands on a Joseph Deck text written in German, and he read it, and he loved it. He fell in love with it. He started teaching it. Bill Cardona, who is this gentleman on the left here in the lower left corner, hooked up with him and they started teaching together. Bill at that time was a registered pharmacist. Bill eventually became a naturopath, and Bill is my constitutional iridology teacher. Excellent, excellent. Thank you for giving me those 2s. I really appreciate it. And so thanks to Harry and Bill, constitutional iridology came to North America, and it is what I love. I started as a Jensenian iridologist. I did Jensen iridology for about the first 10 years of my practice, and I got frustrated. Things that I'd been taught weren't working. It wasn't doing what I was told it would do. When I learned constitutional, it was like, now I get it. Now I understand why that wasn't working, and now I love doing iridology. Let's talk about why iridology works. The eyeball is the largest neural receptor in the body. The iris itself has 28,000 nerve endings, and we don't even know what they all do yet. The eyeball, because it is a part of the nervous system, develops embryologically at the same time the rest of the nervous system does. And so our understanding is that if there is something in the body that is that the nervous system knows is developing with its own little quirk, that is going to show up in the iris. There's going to be some kind of a little marking in the iris potentially. Now, what we see again in the iris isn't a one-to-one correlation. It's not one marking equals one problem. It's more like the markings suggest inherent challenges. And when we understand how the markings work together, we get a deeper, more complex picture today, or a more complex picture of what's going on. I would love to know how you're doing so far. And do you have any questions so far? right? Feel free to pop those into the comments and chat. Let me know if you're doing good. And if you are, that's great. And just give me a good if you're doing well. And if you've got a question, be sure to pop in. Now we're going to be heading into doing 3 iris analyses in just a moment so that you can see how this actually works in a clinical setting. You good with that? All right, so first little tiny commercial plug here, very tiny, and that is the upcoming course, Dynamic Iridology Assessment System, will be starting on September 9th. And registration is now open. Linda, so good to see you. Kinga is loving this, so fabulous, excellent. So I'll give you a little more information about this as we go on, because I know you're going to want some details about things. And so here's what I want to share with you right off the top before we do some iris analysis. And that is, because you want to know the details about a course before you enroll, we are doing an info session on Wednesday, June 30th at 12 noon Mountain Time. You can see the different time zones here for North America. If you are in the UK, you'll have to use a time zone converter, or if you're anywhere else. And Rise with Jackie says, very interesting so far. Thank you, Rise with Jackie. Thank you for commenting. And so with this, in this webinar on June 30th, we'll go over all of the details of who would want to take this course, why they would want to take it, how they will benefit, how it will help them in their holistic wellness practice, their business. We'll talk about what's included in the course. We'll talk about the mentoring and the support. We'll talk about what the tuition is, what the payment plans are, all of the details coming for you on June 30th in that webinar. All right, let's pop back and look at some eyes. So what can iridology teach us? Well, for today's webinar, again, we are focusing on the iris of the eye. We're not going to look at the sclera at all, because that is just broadens things even that much more and gets a little bit deep. Hi, Sophia. Great to see you on Instagram with us. The iris itself teaches us about inherent predispositions. So what Bill Caradonna taught me, and I loved this when he taught it to me, I still love it now. The irides, that's the correct plural for a human iris. The irides don't give us answers. They teach us what questions to ask. I love that. So as we look at this eye, this is what we would consider a biliary constitution. So that's the basic category this eye falls into. And when we talk about a biliary constitution, we know that our first areas of interest are going to be to understand the client's symptoms, of course, and then to understand the liver, digestion, and blood sugar balance for this client. Those are our primary areas of focus with a biliary constitution. And they will help us to understand more about what this client needs help with and how to help them. So this client was a woman in her mid-60s. She came to me. Her complaints were that she had a lot of stress and she wanted to lose some weight. She had lab tests from her doctor that showed us that she had elevated hemoglobin A1C and elevated cholesterol. Now, the eyes do suggest in a couple of ways that her cholesterol could be out of balance, or her blood sugars could be out of balance. And both of those, between the elevated cholesterol and the elevated A1C were confirmed by lab tests. This eye tells us that this person is very predisposed to spending a lot of time in this sympathetic nervous system. Right now, hopefully you've got some anatomy and physiology under your belt, and that's one requirement that I have of all of my students, is that they already have taken an anatomy and physiology course somewhere, because we don't take time to explain what all these different things mean. We want to work on that anatomy foundation and tie it into iridology. And so this person spends a lot of time in that sympathetic nervous system response, which means she's always waiting for the next crisis. She's always a little bit anxious. She is also predisposed to having her liver run the show, and that can show up as symptoms like immune compromises. It can show up as blood formation issues. It could show up as energy problems. It could show up as allergies. It could show up as hormonal issues. Liver plays key roles in various aspects of digestion. So again, we've got some areas that we want to look at, and we want to then correlate these back to what her symptoms are. So we're never telling her you have these problems. We're always looking at the symptoms. We're looking at what we see in the eye, and we're looking at what story does this tell us. I also wondered, as I looked in her eyes, if she had the MTHFR defect. Are you familiar with MTHFR? If you are familiar with that, I'd like to have you just put MTHFR in the comments box. MTHFR, if you know what that is. So quick little description, MTHFR is a liver enzyme insufficiency where the liver cannot properly methylate folic acid and B12, or the cobalamin vitamins. And so when people can't do that, they tend to run into a little more predisposition towards having some anxiety and some slight mental health warps. Kimberly, excellent. I'm so glad you know what MTHFR is. That just makes this so much easier. And so there are indicators in her eyes that suggest she has MTHFR. There are indicators in her eyes that suggest her liver likely is impacting her digestion specifically. And again, when you've got your anatomy and physiology under your belt, you see these connections. So when she lives in or living in the sympathetic nervous system response zone means that she's under stress a lot, and a lot of that stress she creates for herself. Some people would call it her a worrier. Now, what we know is that stress doesn't make anything better. It usually makes everything worse. When we see orange in the iris, it suggests that there could be liver pancreas imbalances. When we see brown, it suggests liver imbalances. We'll touch a tiny tad on the sclera. She's got blood vessels that are running parallel to the limbus of her iris. That suggests some circulatory congestion possibly happening in her heart and lungs. And we might be suggesting some arterial blockage here. Now, we aren't diagnosing that. She does have elevated cholesterol. She is in her mid-60s, so the chances that she is looking at a little bit of congestion in her arteries is very likely. Is this all making sense? If this is all making sense, give me a makes sense in the comments so that I know that we are on the right path here. Hi, Montenegro, good to see you. And Sophia, so good to see you on Instagram with us. All righty, we've got make sense. Excellent. Good job. Excellent. So what did I do for her? What did I recommend for her? Well, the first thing I recommend, and Kimberly's giving me a thumbs up, fabulous. What I started with, and what I love about Iridology is it helps me to really laser in on the recommendations, because we need to make sure that she is, that we're not giving too many recommendations. This is one of the things that I have against so many iridologists who do iridology assessments on social media, is they go through and they start picking on every single little marking. They give this huge long list of markers, then they give a huge long list of what's wrong, and then they give a huge long list of what you can do about it, and they never take any thought of, is this doable, and does it really, are these really things that are important for the client, right? They're, okay, in my opinion, they're just showing off. And it's not practical, it's not applicable, it's not usable. It's overwhelming is what it is. And Rise with Jackie and Sophia are saying this makes sense. Excellent, excellent, excellent. And so is Tara and Durya and Cindy. Fabulous, thank you for that. So here's what we did. Now, this client has actually been a client of mine we did the math for 39 years now. Right. And she'll come in for a few sessions and then she disappears for a few years, which is what all my clients do. And I'm good with that because we got them to a place where they're managing just fine. They're doing well. When things start to come apart, they come back for a few more visits and we get them back on track. So she was coming back because she had got these lab tests that were not great. So what we did with her, she's got a strong nutrition background, so I knew I could give her a little more homework than I would normally give a client on a first appointment. We suggested that she needed to increase her leafy greens and that she needed protein with every meal. I didn't need to go into details of what that looked like because she already knew. With many of my clients, I actually outline what a serving of protein looks like. And we increased her low carb vegetables. So we got her doing more of the salad kinds of things, you know, zucchini and cucumber and beans like green beans and things like that, and lettuce and cabbage and cauliflower and broccoli to decrease her carb count, to bring her blood sugars into balance. She also has a strong background using supplements, so I could go a little heavier with her in the supplements. So we added omega-3. We added berberine, I added garden essence enzymes. She was on track, so good for 3 months. She went back to the doctor, got her labs done. She had lost 20 pounds in 3 months, which was great because she has about 60 to lose. And all of her numbers, her A1C, her cholesterol, everything was in the high normal range. It had come into a much better range. Then stress hit. They had some extended problems in their extended family that were major. She fell off her program. Her numbers all went south again. And then she had a massive heart attack. We've been working again together since her heart attack, and her numbers are coming around again, which is brilliant. But we kind of knew she was heading in the wrong direction when we first met. And we knew when she had her heart attack that we hadn't had nearly enough time to get things completely the way they should be. We need to remember that heart attacks always have an emotional trigger as well. I was not able to diagnose that she would have a heart attack. That is not my job. My job is to take my client from where they are and move them forward. Iridology is best when we use it to guide us to where the issues might be, when we use it to guide us in the questions we want to ask, and when we use it to inform the recommendations we want to make. Yeah, have you seen this on social media where people say toxic, you need to cleanse, congested liver, this eye looks so unhealthy? Have you seen those kinds of things? Yeah, they drive me crazy, drive me absolutely crazy, because you can't possibly know that. Unless you know that person's background, you cannot make those kinds of assumptions, right? This, like I said, I've got clients whose eyes look like this, and yet they are vegetarian, they're healthy vegetarian, they're smart vegetarian, or they're eating everything organically. They've got a perfectly healthy lifestyle. So what this is showing us is much of their inherent predisposition. Right? And that helps us to then move forward, preventing things. Can you see how understanding your client's health on this level could actually really benefit you working with your clients? What I love about this is that it allows me to create their programs in small steps, to give them 1 or 2 things to work on for the next month, to create that habit. And then when I see them again in a month, add 1 or 2 steps or a supplement, and just build the program at a manageable rate. Does that sound like a good thing to you? Does it? If it does, give me a sounds good in the comments box. Let's look at another eye, another set of eyes. These are the eyes of a client who is in her mid-30s, and she really wants to have a baby. Her eyes are what we consider lymphatic, polyglandular. Kinga, thank you for letting me know that that sounds good. Thank you so much. And Rise with Jackie says absolutely, and so does Sophia. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Lymphatic, polyglandular, anxiety, tetanic. So what does that mean to us? It means that she's going to be more prone to being over acid. She's going to be more prone to internalizing stress, and she's going to be more prone to hormonal imbalances. She's got a tight collarette, which suggests she might be prone to constipation and poor energy production. However, having seen all of that, we never, ever, 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 Myra, thank you for saying it sounds fantastic. We never tell them that. We ask them. So I would ask her, how's your energy? I would ask her, what's your diet like? And of course, I would ask her, what would you like my help with? That would be the number one question. Now, because she has this predisposition towards hormonal imbalances, as her eyes suggest, I needed to ask her, what do you know about your hormones? What do you know about your thyroid? What do you know about your ovulation and your menstrual cycles? Because she really wants to be pregnant. Right. And so she was able to tell me that her TSH was normal. Well, again, this is where we want to know our anatomy and physiology. We want to also understand lab tests because THS is such a tiny part of the story, right? We need to know her T4 to T3 conversion. We need to know her liver enzymes in order to really understand if her thyroid is behaving properly or not. We can do a bit of an assessment by getting her to do her basal body temperature. Her BBT tends to be a little on the low side, a little lower than what we would like it to be, which suggests she is probably a subclinical hypothyroid. Now, I can't give her that diagnosis, but I can show her charts, BBT charts, that show what healthy temperatures would be for someone who has a healthy thyroid. And she can then extrapolate when we look at her chart and see that her temps are all a little bit lower, I can say, what do you think that teaches you about your thyroid? And she's a smart girl. She went, oh, that makes it look like my thyroid's not behaving properly, like it might be under functioning. Wow, that's fabulous. That's exactly the direction we need to be looking at. So looking at that, her diet is amazingly clean. She's one of my clients that I tease and say, I want to live with you because your diet is so much better than mine. And she's got time to cook and she's just great in the kitchen. I'm a bore in the kitchen. She had a miscarriage about a year ago. She had, in December, she had a chemical pregnancy. All right, so what do we know about her? We know that we need to make sure that her diet is appropriate for her. A clean diet is great. Are her food choices appropriate for her? So we had to do a bit of cleaning up. We also needed to bump up her protein and we needed to bump up her fat. Both of those were a little bit low, and I find that's a common problem amongst people who are organic vegetarians. Right? And so we needed to do that with her. We needed to make sure that we were supporting her digestion because when we look at her digestive areas in her eye, it suggests that there could be some issues digesting foods. So we ask questions. Are you burpy? Are you farty? Are there foods you've learned to avoid because they don't feel good when you eat them? That tells us how we need to support things. We've got a little bit of orange pigment right here. And we've got little bits of orange in other areas that suggest, again, that she could have some issues with balancing her blood sugars. So again, the coaching as to keeping her protein and her fats where they belong is a really good thing. So we always want to combine what we know about the client with questions we've asked and the answers we get with the diet, with the symptoms, with any other information we can gather to understand what to do. So again, with her on her first appointment, highly motivated. Oh, by the way, she is a second generation client. I took care of her mom when her mom was pregnant with this lady. So that's kind of cool, right? So we put her on a really good prenatal vitamin that had the methylated Bs because I also see indications here that she may not methylate well. And that prenatal has some really good nerve nutrients in it, which she also needs. And we also did some N-acetylcysteine with her because there's some indications here that her liver may not want to do its job properly. And we've just boosted her fat intake, so we want to make sure she's handling that. We suggested that she may be considering broadening out from being vegetarian and have some organic, naturally raised meats in her diet. Her choice, whether she wanted to stick to fish or go with some wild game or some bison or things like that. And she was actually very comfortable with that. And that has begun to correct her temperatures And I work with her now about every 3 months to watch her temperature charts and to go over her supplements and to look over any recent lab tests to make sure we are still on the right track and to tweak her program on an ongoing basis. When she gets pregnant, it's highly likely that she and I will be meeting every month to make sure that she has a good pregnancy because she's had some tragic history there. How would that work for you to have a situation where your clients want to keep coming back for you to work with you? Even if there's gaps of a few years, but they want to come back when they're ready. Does repeat business, having repeat clientele, sound like a great way to manage a scalable business? If repeat clients is what you want, I want to see repeat in the comments box here. Hi, Carrie, good to see you. And Living Remedies, good to see you. So again, if repeat business would be a good thing for your business, let me know. Here we have a woman who is in her mid-50s and she's got hot flashes. Now, she's also a repeat client. When she came in, she said, you know, you worked with me 20 years ago for a couple of sessions. You completely fixed my problem. And that's why I haven't been back. And it's like, great. I'm so glad that worked. And I'm so glad you remembered me to come back to me now. She falls into the category we call hematogenic. Hematogenic means that we're always going to be wondering and asking questions about her blood and about her liver. Kinga, thank you for telling me repeat is a good thing for your business. Yeah, it truly is. Mayra says, I have people that bring me all of their family. Absolutely. And that's what we want. And Carrie and Rise with Jackie both like the idea of repeat business as well. Yeah, and that's what we want. That's what that previous client, her mom, and I see her and her sister, and then actually the mom sent me in several of her sisters, and I'm working with grandchildren of that, the first client now, and this is what we want, where we are working with the family to improve overall health. So this woman, client, again in her mid-50s, I'd worked with her years ago. We resolved her issues. Now she's back. She's got hot flashes and she's really not happy about that. She's been doing hormone replacement therapy because it's the only thing she knew to do until she went, oh, there might be natural answers to this. And that's when she came back to me. Hi, Gal, good to see you. And so she has her diet pretty well figured out. She's not completely vegetarian, but she's got a very clean diet. And she really does want to get rid of these hot flashes because they're messing up her sleep. So as I look at her eyes again, she's the kind of person who lives in her sympathetic nervous system, that her adrenals are going to be always ready to respond to a stressful situation. So I needed to ask her, I needed to drill deeper here and ask her, oh, by the way, she's a psychologist. So she really understands stress. She understands adrenals. She understands all of that kind of stuff. She understands and has the tools to help her manage her stress. And this is also excellent because I could build on that. So important to find out what your client's background is so that you can build on what they already know. So I asked her about her sleep. I asked her what she does to regenerate, to recharge. I asked her how she handles stress. I asked her what symptoms does she have when she's under stress. And she said, oh my goodness, the hot flashes get so much worse. Well, I already knew that. That's a common thing, right? So then we talked about liver. And I asked her if she had any problems digesting fats. No, she was good there. I asked her, does she hold a grudge? Does she house her temper? And she looked at me kind of funny. And I said, I bet you know that the liver is where we store anger, bitterness, and resentment. And she went, yep, I do. And I said, being hematogenic, I need to ask you, how do you manage those things? Do you hold a grudge? She said, no, I used to, but I now, you know, if I'm angry and if I think I'm holding a grudge, I work through it and I let it go because I know it doesn't serve me well. And that's just brilliant. So the only thing The only thing that was not well balanced in her diet, that was not appropriate for where she needed to be, was that she would drink 1 cup of Turkish coffee every day. Now, I got to tell you, I've never drunk coffee in my life. By mistake, I once sampled a mocha muffin. It was the most disgusting thing I'd ever tasted in my life. And I've never needed to drink coffee. The smell of it drives me around the bend. And so I had no idea what Turkish coffee is. I still don't know what it is, but it had coffee and it had coffee beans. So that was all I really needed to know here. So knowing what I know about coffee, the liver, the adrenal glands, B vitamins, things like that, I asked her, are you willing to do an experiment? Now, I rarely ever tell a client exactly what to do because that's not my job. I teach them why this could be important. I share knowledge with them, and then I will usually ask them to do this by way of experiment. So I explained what coffee does in the body, and the caffeine and the acid levels. And then I asked, are you willing to do an experiment and give it up for 10 days to see what it does, how not having that helps you? She said, yep, I can do that. Great. She gave it up for 10 days with the understanding that after 10 days, she could go back to drinking it. And in fact, I wanted her to go back to drinking it so she would see a clear contrast of with and without, right? And so when she came back to see me a month after I made that invitation, I asked her how she was doing. And, we had done some B vitamins with her and whatnot. But we also did the coffee thing. And she said, well, it was interesting because when I quit the coffee, the hot flashes quit. Oh, I knew that would happen because that always happens. And so I said, and did you go back to drinking it? And she said, yes. And I said, and what happened with the hot flashes? Oh, they're back. And so I said, so what is your decision on this? Do you want the coffee, or do you want the hot flashes, or would you rather be free of the hot flashes and give up the coffee? And she said, well, coffee is the only thing I do that is not really good for me. And I enjoy it so much that I'm going to keep it, and I'll go back to my doctor and we'll play with the hormone replacement therapy. It totally broke my heart, but it's not my decision. It's not my life. Now, we talked about how the caffeine stresses the adrenals, how it depletes the B vitamins, how there's no way we could add enough B vitamins to actually counteract the effect of the caffeine and the coffee. And there's no supplement that I've got that's strong enough to fight against the coffee and the caffeine. And so in the end, she left as a friend, right? I just said, you know what this will do for you. If you decide to ever give up the coffee, you can do that on your own. You don't even need me for that anymore. If there's ever anything else I can do to help you, please do give me a call. This isn't a deal breaker for me. I don't live in your life. I don't make decisions for you. You have to decide what is best for you. And if the coffee is important to you, then I support you in keeping it. If there's ever anything else I can do for you, please reach out to me, right? So we left on really good terms, and who knows, maybe in a few years, she'll call me back. How would having this kind of information in your practice, how would it help you? I want you to give that a thought for a minute, if you would, please. And if you feel like sharing that, I would love to see that in the comments box. How would being able to understand your clients at a level where you could create very simple, very succinct, what I call next step programs right in your client sessions, how would that help you in your business? Would it free up some time for you? Would it help to build the repeat business end of things? How would it help you? Hello, Ashley. Good to see you. Hi, Tim. Good to see you on Instagram. How we use Iridology. This is one of the questions we asked at the beginning. How do we use it? We use it to gain insight. We use it to guide our questions. We use it to create rapport. When you're looking at someone's eye, they've told you what they want help with. You're looking at their eye, you see a marking, and you ask a question that has a laser focus, and you nail it. Your client goes, oh my goodness, how did you know? And you can come back to the eye and go, well, this marking here suggests that there would be a challenge in that direction. That really gains their trust. It helps create rapport very, very quickly. That enables us to give information, to share recommendations. It enables us to create doable sequences of recommendations that are tight enough, that are specific enough, that are finite enough that our clients can stick to the programs, which means they can get results. If we give our clients lists this long of recommendations that they can do, alkalize your diet, give up the coffee, eat more, get more healthy fats and oils, get more good proteins, do this, do that, cut out the grains, sprout this, eat this on full moons every second month or whatever. They can't stick to that, which means they don't come back because they weren't able to be successful. And well, you wouldn't recommend it if they couldn't do it, but they couldn't do it. So now they're a failure. So now they don't want to come back, and you've just cost yourself a client. Right? So I like to use Iridology to create very targeted, very succinct programs, and to build on those programs as my client has success, as they create new habits. Is this all making sense? Are you loving this? If you're loving this, I'd love to see a love this in the comments box. So with Iridology, it helps us to gain insight. It guides our questions. It helps us to create rapport. It informs our recommendations. Love this, do you? Yes, yes. And that was in caps, no less. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. Have an appointment at noon. Kinga, we will touch base with you. Yes, run off to your appointment. I'm running a little over time. Thank you for being with me. Thank you for your interactions. And it lets us create doable sequences. Rise is saying, love this, has been very informative. Fabulous. Well, that's exactly why I love teaching this to holistic health coaches. So quick little commercial here, 3 minutes at most, probably only 2. The Dynamic Iridology Assessment System is the only live, online, fully mentored course for nutritionists, herbalists, and naturopaths who want to streamline their clinical work without sacrificing client care. Too many holistic practitioners see the client, then go off, invest their own time to create a program, bring that back to the client, and that program creation time often takes anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. That is typically time that you're not really getting paid for. You might think you are. You might think that if you charge $99 for a session, that 5 hours of work for $99 is a good deal. I actually don't think it is, because your training costs you a lot more than that. Right? So when you learn Iridology and learn it well and learn how to use it in clinic, you will be able to create your programs right in your sessions. You'll be able to create programs because you create them quickly. You will be able to create programs that your clients can actually stick with. That means your clients will stick with you because they're getting better results. And that's long-term retention because they have success. If you want to learn more than just iris markers, if you actually want to learn how the markers play with each other, how they play off each other, if you want to learn and practice how to create programs for your clients right in your client sessions, if you want long-term ongoing mentoring and support, then I invite you to join me for our next info session about the course. And I'm just going to post this quickly in the webinar chat box for those of you who are with me on Facebook and on Instagram. You'll see the URL on your screen. So on Wednesday, June 30th at 12 noon Mountain Time, you'll see all your North American time zones there. Join me for an info session that will teach you all about the course itself, that will teach you who it's for, how it will benefit you as a holistic practitioner. It'll teach you how to work with this in your practice. It'll give you information about when the course runs, what's included in your tuition, what the tuition is, what the payment plans are that are available. It'll teach you about all the resources you have access to as a part of the class, a part of the course. This course is designed for people who, how do I explain this? It is designed as a certification preparation course, so that if you choose to certify, I will be there to help you prepare for that. If you choose to not certify, that's just fine. The course will still give you the same fabulous information and the same long-term mentoring. So I'm not seeing any other questions, but I'll hang around for just a moment. Does anyone have any other questions that they would like to ask, or any comments they would like to make? I would love to share anything that I can with you. And I really would love, I'm inviting you to join me on the 30th for this webinar to learn more about the course. tinyurl.com/2021-June-30th. All right, we're not seeing anything else come through. Thank you so much for being with me today. I have had a ton of fun. I hope you've learned something. I hope this has been helpful for you. And I really hope to see you on the 30th as well. Take care and have a fabulous, amazing, wonderful day. And we will talk to you soon. Bye for now.